Gaze reading where the greats drop by. Trendy authors tell us all the who, what, and why. Anyone can listen cause we're spoiler free. Gaze reading from Pulitzer stars to book club picks, where the curious minds can get their fix. So you say you're not gay, well that's okay. There's something for everyone. Gaze reading.
Hello and welcome to Gaze Reading. I'm your host, Jason Blitman, and on today's episode, I have Leila Mottley talking to me about her book, The Girls Who Grew Big. And the guest gay reader today is Bookstagram darling, the one and only Chip Pons, aka Books Over Bros. And he talks to me about what he's been reading, but also about his new book, Winging It With You. Both of their bios can be found in the show notes. So if you listen, then you haven't missed it. But in case you have, the Gaze Reading Book Club is officially here. I have teamed up with Alstora to bring you a curated queer book for just $1 to start. We're kicking off in July with Disappoint Me by Nicola Dinan. And each month I will be hand-picking a book written by an LGBTQIA+ author. And their work is going to hit that literary but approachable sweet spot. I call it accessibly literary. You become a part of the community of readers where we can all chat online and talk about the book. And there are a bunch of little different chat rooms that we could be a part of. So spoilers and no spoilers and all sorts of fun things. And it's going to be really great. And for every subscription, Alstora donates a book to an LGBTQ+ young person. And with every subscription, you get a crazy discount on Alstora's website. So it's such a good deal. The link is in the show notes, but also in the Instagram bio. Go check that out. Again, you could start for $1 and check it out and see how it goes and see if you like it. And then all the other books are so reasonably priced after that. I can't believe it. I'm very excited. Anyway, if you like what you're hearing, share us with your friends, like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. It is such a labor of love, this little gaze reading that we have going on over here, and every little bit helps. So whether it's, a like on social media or a follow on your podcast platform of choice, or even a 5-star review, it goes so far and helps get other listeners over our way. We are at Gaze Reading on Instagram. I think those are mostly all the things. Thank you so much for joining me today and enjoy my conversations with Leila Mottley and Chip Pons. I'm so excited to have you here.
I'm excited to be here.
Welcome to Gaze Reading.
Thank you.
And the cover is gorgeous.
Thank you.
We're here to talk about The Girls Who Grew Big. Do you use a pop socket?
No, I don't. I don't have one. Yeah.
You don't? Oh, you have to get one.
I know. I've heard good things.
I'm a big fan. I'm a pop socket user. That reminded me I need to put my phone on Do Not Disturb. Oh, I also usually have a notebook next to me. Ugh, I'm a mess.
I usually have the book next to me and I don't know where it is.
That's okay. I forgive you. I'm obsessed with this cover.
Yeah.
Was it painted specifically for this, or was it?
No, this cover was a long journey. This is the 12th draft. Like, it was months of back and forth. And actually, my wife found this painting.
Oh my God, I love that.
Yeah. And the artist, Ashley January, she does a lot of art around like Black maternal mortality and motherhood. And I saw this. My wife showed me this painting of hers and I was like, it's perfect. And
Did you say Black maternal mortality?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. She does incredible art. I think she's Chicago based, but she has
very
galleries all over the world.
I am obsessed that you're a doula.
Yeah.
How on earth did that come to be?
I don't really know when I got that in my head. That's something I wanted to do. I worked as a infant toddler teacher for a few years in my teens, and I loved it. And I loved being with the kids. It's also one of the most exhausting jobs out there. And so when I became a full-time author, I missed the kids and I missed being like surrounded in this world of being really present. Kids make you present. And I think similarly, like pregnancy and birth and being in this space of people going through the largest transformation in their lives is similarly grounding. And so a year before Nightcrawling came out, I trained and I was certified as a doula. And then, I've been attending births. Mostly, like, I've had more time over the past year. When you're a doula, you're on call. So you have to be, which is why, like, right now I'm on a pause because I can't be on call. But I love it. It is in big contrast to my work as a writer in just like day-to-day life. Writing is so solitary and sometimes can feel a little disconnected from the world and present reality. Like you're creating a whole other world and it's so based in imagination. And then to be able to really ground and my work is about people and I get to be in relationship to all of these different people.
Yeah.
It's
and you're also like bringing a baby into life.
It's the craziest experience.
In both senses.
They're definitely birds. I know. It's such a process too, and like similar to pregnancy, like it's a long gestation, and then finally, like it's just out in the world.
It's like such an intense metaphor that you then live for real.
Yeah.
Wow, that's so cool. So random, but I'm obsessed, and I'm just like imagining you being on call right now and in 10 minutes being like, I gotta go.
Well, it happens right now because I am like we're about to hit publication and then there's the months post publication. I have a birth I'm on call for in August and they're like, you need to do this like interview and I'm like, I might leave in the middle of it, but okay.
Now you're on call for this birth in August. Do you like form a relationship with the family ahead of time?
Typically I do prenatal visits for months ahead of birth. And so we have a foundation of trust and we know each other well enough that when it's go time, like it's we just slide into, okay, this is what we've been rehearsing for.
So cool. This is not the same in any way, shape, or form. So I am not trying to compare. However, I have officiated a bunch of weddings. And I was working for a company where I would get paired with couples ahead of time. And so I would have a few check-ins with them prior to the wedding. So you have this like little relationship with these strangers and then you're with them for this important.
So it's such a strange relationship because like it is such a huge moment for them and like I feel connected to them because I get to witness it and then I see them usually for 6 weeks or so postpartum and I check in months down the line too and sometimes people just send me pictures of their babies 6 months later.
That's so cute.
It is, but it's so crazy because I'm like I saw these babies on the day they were born and walked through early parenthood with their parents and then I don't see them again for many months.
Or ever sometimes.
Or ever.
Which it makes sense that the book opens with a birth. Okay, The Girls Who Grew Big. What is your elevator pitch?
So it is about 3 young mothers in Panhandle, Florida, and it follows each of them through early motherhood, through pregnancy, through birth. When a new girl, Adela, arrives in town, she's 16, she's pregnant, and her parents have sent her from Indiana, her like wealthy upbringing in Indiana, down south to live with her grandmother, have her baby, leave her baby there, and return home like nothing happened. But when she arrives in town, she's brought into this group of other young mothers who are kind of raising themselves and their kids in the back of a pickup truck.
The capital G girls. You, earlier in this conversation, you said that kids make you present. What does that mean to you? How have children in your life made you present?
They are experiencing everything for the first time and they force you into experiencing it with them. Like you really can't wander off into space. Like they'll bring you back.
That's so
over and over again. And like when you're at your limit, they push your limit past what it once was. Like they require a lot of you and they give a lot to you. I think that being in the presence of kids is like one of the hardest and like most beautiful things that we can do. And they're like, they allow us the ability to either show up or not. And it is hard. And I'm not a parent yet, but watching parents do it and watching them become someone they like literally did not know they could be, it's incredible. Like kids, they'll make you be present because they are and because they need you.
Yeah. It's funny. I'm also not a parent, let's say, yet. My sister, who's younger than me, has a 2.5-year-old and an infant. Wow. And it's been really fun both watching the 2.5-year-old grow up and the things that just the other day she pointed to her toe and she said, I have a boo-boo literally right here. And I was like, who are you? And also watching my sister become a mother. Like, it's such a specific transformation.
Really
yeah, but it's been really fun to watch.
It is.
Who are your girls, capital G girls?
In my own life? I have I'm surrounded by a lot of mothers, and and like they all parent differently and exist differently. I think it's like it's awing to witness different people parent and the many ways there are to mother. I think in the girls we get to see a wide array of people who are all kind of in a similar stage of life, but who are figuring it out differently and contending with the idea that like whatever they do is like never going to satisfy everyone. And that's a lot of what I think motherhood is like, having to come to terms with the fact that there is so much judgment and so much scrutiny over any and every choice that mothers make. And at a certain point, like you have to just stand in your own choices. And that can be hard, but I think it also in a lot of ways makes people a new version of themselves. If so many people say they cannot recognize who they are after they give birth, and it's a death of self and a rebirth, and you have to stand your ground and protect your kids and protect this new version of yourself in your life.
Yeah. It's interesting because you just said new version of yourself when we were talking about mothers giving birth and then becoming that version of themselves. I think in our lives in general, we go through these stages and phases and become different versions of ourselves, but also people are coming in and out of our lives. I think there are like seasons for friendship sometimes. There's the time and the place. And the book got me thinking so much about just sort of friendship in general. Do you remember your first real friend?
Yeah. I had a friend when I was 2. And then I had kind of the same best friend during elementary school. So yeah. But friendships they're so interesting because a lot of the time when you're younger, like it is circumstantial, right? We meet our
100%.
friends based on where we are and what is like convenient. And we have all of these times that are like set up to talk to our friends and exist with our friends. We have all of these shared experiences. But then in adulthood, like that's not what it is. And friendship is so much harder to find and maintain when you don't share all of the like daily experiences with someone.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm in my, let's say, mid to late 30s right now, and getting older, it's so hard to make friends because of life circumstances, right? Like I'm not in school. I'm not in positions where I'm connecting with new people. So funnily enough, this is a way for me to just like find and find common ground with people and connect through in reading the book. But also as you were talking about the circumstances of your first friends, I was thinking about who are mine. And I was like quickly running through my Rolodex and I was like, okay, this person when I was in like mommy and me classes with my mom, who was like my best friend, was one. A kid in Cub Scouts when I was in elementary school. There were 2 or 3 people that I was good friends with throughout elementary school. And then that early chunk of time, all of those people that I could think of that I was closest with are gay now.
That's so funny.
I was like, oh, we were clearly drawn to each other subconsciously in some capacity. Yeah, that's really interesting.
That is fascinating. I went to an art school in middle school and high school, so pretty much everyone was gay. So it wasn't like The anomaly was being straight, and most of my friends from high school are queer. And then now, like in adulthood, I have way more straight friends than I ever have,
Oh,
which
that's
is really
so
funny.
interesting.
Mm-hmm.
You, I'm sure you're like tired of talking about your age, and I'm there's context in which I'm curious to talk
Yeah.
about it later. But now you're, I don't want to say significantly, but you're younger than I am, and so
Yes.
hearing your experience, it's so different from
Mm.
mine. What was that like for you, being so young, being surrounded by young queer people?
I think it's also like context is like I grew up in the Bay where queerness is like just kind of part of the culture.
Yeah,
It wasn't there wasn't as much of coming out, wasn't really a thing. Like I think most of us did it on a low level scale, but it
yeah.
wasn't when I came out to my family, it wasn't like oh, I wasn't concerned about the response.
Hmm.
And honestly, I probably didn't even have to do it.
Yeah.
But I think that living in that and growing up in that culture meant that just wasn't as primary of an identity for me,
Hmm.
which I think meeting other queer people who like grew up in different contexts, sometimes queerness is like a more primary identity. And for me, like sometimes I'll forget until I'm elsewhere and like me and my wife we'll be like walking down the street in Georgia and then we'll be like, all right, we got to remember. And that changes it a little bit. So I think it's like also based in like generations
Yeah.
and having the internet be such a stronghold through my childhood. I think it was like Instagram was the primary one when I was a kid. I was
That's so
too old for
crazy to
TikTok,
me.
but like Instagram there the whole time. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh
So I
my
think
God.
that also probably had
Yeah,
influence on it.
for sure. You talk about growing up in the Bay. I grew up in Florida, South Florida. Let me be very clear.
Okay.
And similarly, I was surrounded by not queer people in the same way that I think the Bay Area is. There is queer
Yeah.
culture in
Yeah.
Florida. There's a lot of arts. There's a lot of just
Really true.
culture in general. And I also grew up Jewish and
Mhm.
in a community that was also quite Jewish. So similar to what you're
Yeah.
describing, like it was never like a quote unquote thing.
Right.
It
Yeah.
just was like the life we were living. But hilariously, in the book, there's someone says, in Florida, you go north to get south. I
Mhm.
had never heard that before. And I was like, oh, that's so true. And I'm shocked I'd never heard that.
That's so interesting. Yeah. Yeah. I grew up hearing that. I
Yeah,
don't know why.
that's funny. I also
Yeah.
imagine, again, the story takes place in the Panhandle. So I'm sure that like people above a certain spot
Right.
in Florida, that's a very common thing.
And I think in the South in general, like,
Sure.
because Florida is the South, but
Right.
doesn't belong to the South in the same way as like
Hmm.
Alabama, Georgia. Yeah. But Northern Florida does.
Right. And you like get north, like Orlando and South is like a whole different place.
Completely. Yeah. It is.
So weird. And also, something that comes up in the book that I did learn growing up is that you were supposed to apparently run zigzag from an alligator when you're running away from them. But that, according to the book, does not
I
sound
know.
true.
I did so much research about alligators. Yeah, it's a really common thing that you're told you're supposed to run zigzag, but like
Yes.
alligators have eyes on
Both
each
sides of
side
their
of
heads.
their
Yeah.
head, so it wouldn't make sense to run zigzag because that's the only time you're actually going in and out of their view. If you ran straight from them, they wouldn't see you.
I know. I don't understand.
It's really fascinating.
So fascinating. Why was I told that?
I don't know. There are so many things like that.
I know. Being the premise of this book is about young mothers in Florida. While I was reading the book, I got a text from a good friend of mine who's a teacher in Florida. She was telling me that they just implemented a new sex ed curriculum,
Mhm.
pushing abstinence until marriage, the importance of
Yeah.
heterosexual marriage unit, the unchangeable nature of the sex binary. And I was just
Mhm.
like, it is just so bonkers to me that while I'm reading this book,
Yeah,
that's what's literally getting pushed.
it's true. Yeah. And Florida policy is they're quick with they keep going. So over the duration of writing this book, the laws around abortion changed like 4 times, I think, in the course of 4 years.
Yeah.
And it was a struggle to keep up with what was supposed to be a contemporary Trouble.
Like literally it gets published and immediately it's historical fiction.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And part of the conversation we had to have after the last ban, which was a 6-week abortion ban, and 6 weeks, it's so early. Most people don't know they're pregnant at 6 weeks. So at that point, I was like, there's no way the plot falls apart. It collapses with this. So I ended up moving it to be set in 2023, which would be the abortion ban at, I believe, 15 weeks or 11 weeks for a medication abortion. Maybe 12 to 15 for a DNC. So that ended up being the way that it went, but it changed so many times. It went 15 weeks, 11 weeks, 6 weeks, and keeping up with it was impossible because once Roe v. Wade was overturned, then they started enacting these policies really quickly, and then it had to go to the Florida Supreme Court, and then it passed through, and then they changed it again, and up with the conservative politics in this current moment was impossible for this book. But it also relies on the idea of it being incredibly difficult to access abortion, but not impossible.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it's so fascinating. You saying that just puts it into such a different perspective for me, because it is not uncommon for laws or, I don't know, all sorts of things to not matter to someone until it matters to them.
Completely. Yeah.
And I imagine, and I don't want to make any generalizations, but I imagine that a person in Florida only cares about an abortion law at a very specific moment in time. And so the fact that you were tracking it over the course of years of writing a novel and were able to see it changing constantly, whereas someone who literally lives in Florida who might not have any sense of how often it's changing until they quote unquote need to know.
Right. Yeah. And we're being overwhelmed with policy changes, and it makes it impossible to keep up with everything. And so you pick and choose what's important to you. And then one day you realize that you missed something.
Right. Absolutely. Right. At this point for me, I'm just like, am I allowed to still be married to my husband? Okay, cool.
Right.
Right. Let's keep moving on and whatever. Yeah. Family is created by confession is a little concept that pops up in the book.
Yeah.
What does that mean to you?
I think particularly in the context of shame, which is a lot of what these girls are contending with. And the idea that you're not supposed to say or speak of things that are taboo, that are illicit, ends up meaning for them that when they decide to disclose anything to each other, it creates a sanctity if that information is preserved and kept sacred in the relationship. And so these girls create a family together just by way of being able to exist fully and completely as themselves. And I think one interesting thing about young pregnancy is that it's open. There's no hiding it. And so in a lot of the ways that as teenagers, especially teenagers maybe with more strict parents or coming from conservative communities, you have to hide the things you're doing as a teenager. Everyone knows it's happening.
Right.
And
hold this jacket in front of you.
Right, exactly. But then at a certain point, when you have pregnancy as part of that, there is no hiding. And so the shame becomes outward and open, and it lives and breathes in these children. And these girls are forced to be excommunicated from their community because of that, because they can't hide it. And that is what is being asked of them. And so by being able to go to each other and create this little community in themselves that ends up being the family in which they're raising their children, they're allowed to say or do whatever they need to. And it becomes a release.
Yeah. Yes. And it had me thinking about friendship in general and what friendship means. And for me, I think a recurring theme in friendships is trust. And similarly, it's okay if trust and quote unquote confession and being able to live in that shame with people is what sort of emerges into family, is what takes a friendship into family.
And in some ways, a rejection of that shame by experiencing it with others.
Yeah. For someone to say, no, I'm not going to feel shame here. And so therefore they're like taking away your shame too.
Completely. Yeah.
Yeah. It's such a powerful experience. The book is about becoming and that sort of like evolution of who you are, right? Like earlier in this conversation, talking about what it means to become a mother from one day you're not and the next day you are. What has Leila's journey been from pre-Nightcrawling to this to what has your journey been like? What has your process been like as a person, as a writer? How have you become?
Yeah, so much has changed for me since Nightcrawling, and even I think about it in these other sections because I wrote Nightcrawling. I started it when I was 16, I finished it when I was 17, and then the book didn't come out till I was 19, turning 20. So the like rapid amount of change between 16, 17, and 19, 20 meant that by the time the book was coming out, like I had become a different person.
Yeah.
And then was like representing a book that I wrote from a very different part of my life. And now like I'm another 4 years from that. And it's been interesting to like, I feel like a more of an adult now. I'm kind of at 19 and 20, like I was still in the middle ground, and now like I feel like I stand more fully in my adult life and have separated a little more from the person who not only wrote that book but put that book out. And
Sure.
I think it's really interesting and a unique experience to have my 16, 17-year-old like brain memorialized forever.
Yeah.
And it's taken a lot of like processing for me to be okay with that, because it's like having your like diary published and available in any bookstore. And so I like have had to cope with the detachment from that, and also the respect of my like younger self and the work that she created and the meaning that it serves, while also being able to go, and I'm in an entirely different place in my life and I don't want to create anything like that again.
Yeah, that's part of it, right? Just like the moving on and into a next phase as a person, as an artist, as a creator. And for all, you're going to put it on the page and then that's going to be it for 20 years. And it has the cosign of Oprah. There's stakes and pressure there.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. I was saying I was curious to talk to you about your age in the context of the book, because so much of the book is about the sort of naivete of youth. And I think there is this ignorance is bliss component, and in a good way. In the, oh God, I wish I still had that to feel more comfortable, to feel like I was unflappable and everything was okay. And I feel like when I was a young person, I thought I had become. Well, and so I find it so interesting. Like, again, I said, I'm sure you're tired of talking about your age, but for me, I think so much of my hindsight came as I got so much older. And as such a young person, the book is so insightful with things that I think only come, not only obviously, but I think very clearly come with age. Where do you think that comes from for you? Because you're not older, right? But you are able to tap into something. And I want to put a little asterisk, because I think some people say like, well, you're a woman, how could you write from a man's perspective? And I don't mean it like that. Like, you can obviously write an older character, no problem. But there are nuances to reflecting on a young person. I think that's what I'm talking about.
Part of why I wrote this book now was because I do believe that the older I get, the harder it is for me to accurately depict the brain of a 16-year-old.
Sure.
And there is like this hindsight's 2020 like way that we can reflect the older we get that changes our ability to like fully and completely empathize with the experience of teenagers. And so part of why I did this was because I like know I can't do it in 10 years. And in this book, like I knew that I needed to have multiple young mothers. One, because I think it's important that we see teen parents as not monolithic and varied in their experiences, but also because I think it was important to have an older character, Simone, who has 4-year-old twins, and she is pregnant again in the start of the book. And so we see like her reflections as she's like now 21 and has distance that the others don't have,
Right.
and experience parenting, which will age you,
Yeah.
that the others don't have. And her experience, I think, helps us put into context the other girls' experiences, particularly with Adela, because we're also talking about men preying on young girls. And that was important to me because they're a large population of teen parents get pregnant by someone who is 4 to 6 years older than them or more. And that is, when you think about a 14-year-old and a 20-year-old, that's a large age difference.
Yeah.
But when you're 14, it doesn't feel like it because you don't know what it's like to be 20. And so it was important to me that like we get to fully experience the head of Adela, who's 16 and like just can't know what she doesn't know.
Yeah.
And that's what being a teenager is. Like, you don't know what you don't know. And there's something really beautiful about that because you're like falling head first, but also something dangerous about it. And then seeing Simone on the other side, she's reflecting on, I had kids by someone far older than me, and how do I cope with the fact that person is always going to be in my life because they're my children's parent? And also, how do I cope with the fact that that is the story I'm giving my children, and that is a story I have to tell my children, and that isn't necessarily something I'd want for my children.
And I think back to the whole shame piece, that's such an important reason to strip the shame away.
Completely. And so I think it was important to me that we get to experience the large difference between a 21-year-old and a 16-year-old.
Yeah.
And how while both of them are in early parenthood and are young and are trying to like navigate getting to be like young women and also having to be parents at the same time, they're also coming at it from two very different perspectives just by way of what time gives us.
Sure.
And
so in a way, you are the Simone to these characters in your book.
In some way, yeah. I think that I had more distance when I wrote Nightcrawling. I was in it.
Right.
And there wasn't any distance. And like even just the fact of the first person present versus first person past, like there is some way that even I naturally and subconsciously will write into the perspective I can have at the time. And getting to go back into this world of teenage girls was important to me to do because I don't have that much distance from it. I do remember it pretty clearly, and I like know people who are still closer to that.
Sure.
And I also wanted at the same time to balance it with the perspective of hindsight is 2020, and we need to understand the other side of it in order to like really respect what it means to be 16, and also there are things that you're going to learn just through time and experience that are important.
Sure. Yeah. And what was I saying? I don't want to come across as though me being like, you're so young, how could you write this? And I don't want to take away the crazy experiences that you have had as a young person that can age you, right? Like the experience of being in conversation with freaking Oprah about your first book, like that is not something that you just leave that experience and you're like a normal 20-year-old, right? Anyway, I don't want to feel like I'm saying, how could you write this? You're so young. No, like you've been on a journey, and I think that's really cool to it be reflected in the story.
Contextually, like I wasn't probably like a typical 14-year-old either.
Sure.
And like my life forced me to age earlier than I otherwise would have. And I think that has brought some perspective, but I try to remind myself like there are still things that ways my brain works that are based in like the physiological reality
Sure.
of like brain development.
Right.
And so there are like ways that, I function more like I'm 23, and then there are ways that I function more like I'm 40, and
Right.
sometimes they're like in
Yeah.
conflict with each other. But I think they like help me write books that can be both complex and also about young people.
Sure. It's interesting, and I'm curious to talk to my therapist about this. Why I don't want to say I'm stuck on this. I'm very happy to move on, but why it's something that was very much on my mind. And I think some of it is because I was the precocious 24-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
I was the person who was 24, 25, 26, and people thought I was in my early 30s.
Yeah.
And so I, on one hand, when I got older, was like, oh, this is now what it's like. And also, I was sad for the younger version of myself who couldn't just be a young person
Yeah.
and who needed to like live in this world of having been older. Anyway,
Okay.
I think that's why I'm looping on it. There's so much about feeling known and feeling seen and belonging
Mm-hmm.
in the book. And I wrote the question, what does it mean to belong? And then I was thinking, what does it feel like to belong? Because I almost think that there are two different answers there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious what you think about that.
Yeah. I think for the girls in this book, belonging is like being able to be at the crossroads of being a teenager and also a mother, and not having to completely sacrifice either of those experiences. And so a lot of their time together is spent doing things that teenagers do. They dance and they drink and they hang out and they do each other's hair, and it's very quintessentially young of them.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, they're mothering and they're helping each other parent, and they're like teaching each other how to latch their babies, and they're like cooking dinner together. So I think for a lot of like the girls in this book, being able to belong is being exactly where you're at and exactly who you are at any moment, and knowing that this group of young women is going to completely accept you in that, or they're going to tell you that they're mad at you, or they're unafraid to be angry with each other and to fight. And I think that is like part of closeness and connection and like true intimate relationships. You have to be able to be in conflict with those people. And so we see them exist in conflict like any teenagers would and any family would. And I think that is part of their closeness and of the way that they belong to each other, is trusting each other with conflict without kind of, I think, the fear of complete abandonment.
Yeah. So I'm almost hearing, or what I think I'm hearing is what it means to belong is getting to that crossroads and being at the crossroads with others. And then feeling like you belong is getting to experience those things and living in those conflicts and having that freedom of dancing, of drinking, of whatever, and like being a part of that community. Yeah. You, at one point, and really only one point in the book, you use the word coven to describe them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious where that comes from for you, and or why that word in particular.
Yeah, there were a couple different words that came up: coven, gang, cult. Like there are a lot of ways you could describe this group of girls that is unusual. And I think in a lot of ways that like a coven functions, these girls they're a group doing some kind of like witchcraft in their kind of opposition to what is standard, what is normal, what is accepted. I think that there is an inherent rebellion in it. And then I also think similarly to a gang, we see like them be feared and seen as like this violent group. And also like gangs are where people go for belonging, like where they go for family when they don't have any. And that is like what they are and how they relate to each other.
Has that ever been your experience?
I've never been part of large groups of friends. It's not the way that I relate to people.
Yeah, no, I understand that.
I fear large groups. And so I have like more intimate, close friendships that are like either one or two people at a time, and I compartmentalize them into different areas of my life.
Yeah. No, I understand. How did you meet your wife?
We met in college. We lived in the same house dorm,
Uh-huh.
and so we met our first day. Yeah. Yeah.
You didn't start dating on your first day, did you?
2-3 weeks in, like
Oh
pretty
my God.
yeah. Yeah. So, and then it's been like 5.5 years. Yeah.
That's so cute.
Yeah.
I love that. Oh my
Yeah, she's
God.
the best. She's great.
I met someone early on in college and dated them for 2 years, and that was the end of
Mhm.
that. So I like understand conceptually.
Neither of us could have said that we were gonna stay together after college. Yeah.
No, but 5.5 years, that is nothing to
Yeah.
turn your nose up at. That's amazing. Good for you.
Thanks.
The world is going to send you some treasures when you need it the most. Do you believe that?
Yes. But I think sometimes we expect to be able to like pray our way into something different.
Interesting.
I find that usually the treasure, the thing you need, is not the thing that you're hoping or praying for. And then sometimes it's harder to recognize when it comes.
Interesting that that's what I ask you after you tell me you met your wife the first
Yeah.
day of school. Right.
And like what I always tell people is my wife and I, like, she was not the right person for me, and I was not the right person for her when we met. Like we were not ready for each other. And like it was miraculous that we got there. And it took a like solid 6 months to a year to meet each other.
Yeah.
And I don't even think I really knew who she was until 6 months in. And
Yeah.
she'd probably say the same.
That's really cool. One of the best pieces of advice that my husband and I got when we were getting married is that you are not going to be the same person that you were when you got married. And so it's important to evolve together.
Yeah.
And be on that journey with each other and respect that of each other.
Yeah.
And so it sounds like that
Completely.
was
Yeah.
part of what you were navigating.
Well, and I think especially like when we met, I was 17, and so it's been a long time, and we've been
I just finished your first novel.
Yeah, exactly. I was editing it when we met.
Yeah. Oh wow. Oh
And
my
so
God.
she's walked through all of this with me, and like she's gone through so many different changes too. We have been many people together, and I'm sure we will be many more.
I know
Yeah.
it happens.
Yeah.
I think a lot about like fate and karma and destiny when reading the book.
Yeah.
What do those things mean to you?
I'm a believer that you do get swayed towards where you're supposed to go. And there have been times in my life where I fight it, and always like things go wrong. And
Is there something that comes to mind that was like a recent thing with that?
I mean, there are so many ways that I do this, but I think in writing, I do this a lot, actually.
Interesting.
I'm someone who writes pretty quickly. So I wrote 6 books between Nightcrawling and The Girls. And I just it was like banging my head into the wall. And even after I bruised, I just kept going.
Yeah.
And for me, sometimes like I'll fight and like persist to a fault, when sometimes like you just have to let things go. And in that process, like when I actually started writing The Girls, I had told myself like, I'm just gonna have fun. I'm going to have a good time. I'm doing whatever I want, and I don't have to show it to anyone.
Yeah.
And the minute I like released myself, I did have fun, and like it was a different writing experience, and finally like it was able to click. And I think sometimes I have such a history of fighting for things and like pushing really hard, and I think that's a lot of how I got here. But at the end of the day, like usually the thing that makes it work is not something that I am doing. I do a lot of work to get there, and then like at some point you like let go and you release, and that is usually when like the good things happen.
Yeah. I love that. you are about to do a lot of these, so this
Yeah.
question is like unfair.
Okay.
But do you miss them?
I usually don't experience that.
Yeah.
And I think part of it is because through the revision process, I'm really active and in it. And then that very last, and I'm changing things to the end, but then that very last read, I try to read it as a reader as much as I possibly can.
Mm,
And I think it helps me like close
yeah.
and go, okay, I'm like, they're going to be left here.
Yeah.
Sometimes I miss like the kids.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes I think I miss getting to experience the like beachy fun part of it
Sure.
because it's just like a different setting than
Yeah.
any of my other books. So it's like it was a fun experience for me to write and like very contrasted to Nightcrawling, which is a pretty like heavy book through a lot of it. And even like in the bright moments, there's an overlay of darkness in it.
Yeah.
And this book, like, for me was a really bright experience and I got to have fun. So I think there are ways that like I miss how easy it was in a lot of ways.
Mm,
Having 3 first person perspectives was like a really fun challenge for
Yeah.
me. And I'm not doing that right now. So getting to switch between them and like always have something new every day,
mhm.
it was an experience that I miss sometimes.
Yeah. I think because it's like such a strong character study,
Yeah.
as a reader, every time I would come back to the book, I would think, oh, I miss them. I'm
Yeah.
glad I get to check in on them.
Completely. Yeah.
So I wasn't sure if you felt that same way as the author, but you've spent a lot of time with them. So
Right. And
it's fair that they can move
I
on.
feel that way if I like miss a writing day when I was drafting it, then
Mhm.
I would feel that way. And I
Oh,
would,
sure. That's fair.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm like in it.
Yeah.
And now like I've moved on to the next thing, so I miss those characters right now
Yeah.
when I'm not writing. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. This is so fun. It's June right now. Happy Pride.
Right.
Everyone go check out The Girls Who Grew Big by Leila Mottley. Thank you for being here. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you so much. It was fun.
Just gay weird time.
So what's happening? How was your day? Are you like,
It's the end of a long day. It's been a bit chaotic, but everyone's been posting their like Pride hopefuls. And so my phone was like blowing up today, which is like overwhelming, but very exciting.
blowing up because people are posting your book?
They
as a
are.
Pride
I feel
hopeful?
very like excited and honored that I get to take part in the Pride Stacks this year because it's been a minute since I had a book out.
The Pride Stacks. At first, I thought you said the Pride Sex. And I was like, maybe both.
Yeah. I am a romance author after all.
Before we dive in or take off to talk about your book, Chip Pons, I have to know, as my guest gay reader today, what are you reading?
Oh my gosh, what am I reading? Truthfully, I'm not reading anything at the moment.
Hey.
I am like as of Friday, I just got like a 9-page edit letter for my next book. So I'm like I'm reading my own upcoming book at the moment.
You are not the first guest gay reader reading your own book.
I have a lot of books I'm excited about, but currently like I'm very selfishly in my own reading world.
Great.
Yeah.
How do you feel about reading the next book whilst getting in the headspace for the new one to be published?
It's very interesting because I've been working on Winging It With You since 22. So to like finally be able to close that chapter, like I've been mentally done with it for a long time. And so getting into the headspace for something that's a complete pivot, like I'm entering my like paranormal small town era for this next one. And that's been fun. Like I feel like I have all the happy feelings and the excitement for Winging It With You, and then also all of the like excitement and happy feelings for the next one, which is like rare, but there's a lot of anxiety and stress and sleepless nights over it as well, but it's all good.
And I feel like I am not a journalist and this is not like a profile,
Let's do
but
it.
let's say it was.
Perfect.
Because I feel like you You're a very public, in quotation marks, Bookstagram figure.
You
But
know?
I would also argue a little elusive. How do you balance this like working full time whilst being a
Oh,
writer?
yes. I was like, I feel like I'm a yapper and I just tell everyone everything all the time. So I was like, that's interesting that you think that. No,
Well, I think that you are a yapper about
book stuff.
the same things.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
I hear
And I
you.
don't mean to say you're repetitive. I just
No,
mean
I
like
got you.
you have a
I do
brand,
have a brand.
right?
And
Yeah.
I feel like I'm very like transparent about the things that like I love talking about. I've tried really hard to keep, so I have a full-time job. I've had a federal career. I was in the Air Force as a photojournalist for almost 8 years, and then I've transitioned that into a federal career. And so I try to keep those lives very separate because
Uh,
it's just very different. I try to keep my work politics out of my personal politics and vice versa. So like
mm,
my professional life, it's very rare if anyone knows that I've got stuff going on in the book world. Like I've done my hardest to keep that a secret. Yeah,
really? How come?
just we don't need to go down a whole federal rabbit hole, but there are ethical
Sure.
things where it's second employment, like making sure I'm not using
Mm,
company time to do any of my book
to
stuff. And so I
sure,
never
sure.
want to blur lines. And so I take that very seriously because I
Mhm.
love it's weird. This is the first time, probably the last couple of months, where I felt like I have two careers. Like for the
Mm,
longest, it's felt like an established career and like a hobby or like a thing that
sure.
I'm trying to dabble in. And now it's nope, I definitely have two full careers that I'm trying to dedicate 24/7 of my life to, which has been
Mm.
so fun on top of being married and having some semblance of a social life and not eating everything in sight. Like it's just been wonderful.
How do you balance it all?
I don't do it well. I'm very
Mm,
thankful that I have like an incredibly supportive husband who one like encourages me to chase every wild dream that I have, but two who like we're in the same career field and so we
mm,
like not only personally relate but we professionally relate to one another, so it's like he helps me keep everything into perspective.
yeah.
Yeah.
Hooray for a supportive
Yay,
partner.
marriage.
Happy Pride
Thanks.
to all of our supportive partners out there. Two things. Thing one, I want to just publicly acknowledge we are recording at post work Eastern time
Yes.
for you. This is very much not on company time.
It's very not
Um,
no.
but also, you said something that I found so interesting about keeping your professional life separate,
Yeah.
as though you are not calling yourself a professional
I
author.
know. I know. That it's been a
The face you just made was, I know I'm on a journey,
it is
Jason.
a
Leave me
journey, you know?
alone.
So like even like on Instagram how like people can have titles, right? Like I don't remember when I was just a bookstagrammer. Like I feel this is a whole journey of identity, right? Like I feel like I have
Yeah.
one foot firmly planted in both worlds, and I feel icky calling myself a bookstagrammer now or like a book influencer, and I still feel uncomfortable calling myself an author, even though like I've self-published one book. I'm about to have one traditionally published out this year, and then I've got two more planned for the next 2 years. But I remember how nervous I was to change it from I think it was influencer maybe to
Or something like that,
writer,
sure. Mm.
and that felt more natural because like technically I was a photojournalist and I was a writer in the military, so that felt real. And then it wasn't until I think it was like less than a year ago I changed it to author. And that's been like a fun mind game, but I have to slap myself on the wrist every time I go to talk or like to diminish this chapter of my life because it's no longer a hobby and it's no longer something that I'm trying to do. Like I've done it and I'm continuing
Mhm.
to do it. And so I'm trying to be better.
Yeah, listen, I find all of that so interesting for me personally and selfishly because I'm going through a version of the same thing. I never really called myself a bookstagrammer, so I'm not so worried about, but this podcast sort of started in a hobby
Yeah.
space and I can't really call it a hobby anymore.
Yeah.
So I totally understand. And to top it all off, like being in Pride, being in June, to just to unpack the concept of identity in so many different forms.
Yeah, it's definitely, and like I never wanted to seem like I'm not proud of this identity or this part of me. It's just been a lot to like swallow and like to pivot to, because I think there's some sort of imposter syndrome lingering in those insecurities, right? And do I belong where do I belong? Do I belong with the Bookstagrammers? Because I am no longer really reviewing other people's books and promoting other things beyond my friends. But am I sitting at the cool kids table yet? Like, when will I personally feel like I'm there? So we'll see.
You mentioned earlier that there are a handful of books that you're looking forward to reading. Are there any off the top of your head that you are very much looking forward to?
Sorry. Oh, See Me at the
Don't be sorry.
See Me at the Finish Line by Zach Hammett. I am so excited to read this. I just got this in the mail yesterday. It is it's like a university rowing romance. I think it's enemies to lovers, and the cover is so cute. I am just so excited. I have heard nothing but great things, and so this is like next on my reading list.
I love that it's a book about rowers, and of course they have bare arms on the cover.
Absolutely. And there's some armpit showing too. It's like wonderful.
Okay, tell the people about Winging It With You. Do you have an elevator pitch? You must. You've been talking about it for so long.
I know, I've literally been talking it. So Winging It With You is, Winging It With You is my fake dating rom-com set on a reality television show, like The Amazing Race meets Fear Factor meets all the other adventure-based reality TV shows, where poor Asher is begrudgingly going about this journey. He gets to the airport, gets tragically dumped by his loser of a partner of 7 years at the airport ticket line, and starts drowning his sorrows in mimosas and mozzarella sticks at the airport TGI Fridays, where he then convinces randomly the deliciously sexy Theo Fernandez, an airline pilot, to be his travel and competition partner and fake boyfriend. And they travel around the world and they fake it for the cameras, and they have to figure out what is real between them when the cameras stop rolling.
Perfect. Yeah. How did your love of this genre come to be?
Romance?
Yeah.
I feel like I just chase that feel-good feeling of like people falling in love. I think from a young age, I realized that was very important, and like people finding their person was like this beautiful thing in life. I don't know why. I've just always loved love, and I just have always loved people like reaching for someone's hand as they're facing life. And I just remember being so smitten with love stories and rom-coms growing up, and especially as I got older. And it wasn't until maybe my like late teens, early 20s, where I was like, no, this is the genre that takes the cake. There's nothing else that compares to it. I love thrillers. I love mysteries and like being on the edge of my seat. But there is truly nothing more important in my life than like family and love and romance. And it's just, I'm a romantic.
What were some of those rom-coms that inspired you when you were younger?
I don't remember when it came out, but I think like my top tier rom-com is How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. That's my, I know it's,
I love it.
I watched that with like hard eyes. There's just something so undeniable about their chemistry and the banter and the way that I'll never forget Kate Hudson leaning out the window and she's, I'm going to make him miserable, or whatever the line is, where she just is about to wreck this man. And it's so good.
Kathryn Hahn does not get enough recognition for her role in that.
But Kathryn Hahn is a visual and like personality embodiment of one of the characters in Winging It With You. I like totally modeled her after Kathryn Hahn. Like there's a side character, Jen, who just leapt off the page for me. And when I pictured her, I only could picture Kathryn Hahn.
As a rom-com aficionado, this is your first traditionally published book. What was the decision behind like these tropes as the first one out of the gate? Does that make sense? That is such an inarticulate question.
It makes total sense. So my first book, You and I Rewritten, is heavy and like trauma dumpy, and it was like clearly I needed to work through something as I was writing that. And so when I was thinking about what comes next, I was like, I need something light. I need something like that's at the heart of rom-com. Like I want fun, fluff, cheese, like all those things I use like with affection. And so I knew I wanted to do a fake dating romance. And I was like, okay, how could I torture the crap out of two men who are pretending to be boyfriends? And this is like such a random chip lore, but my husband and I, for the past like almost 12 years, have fallen asleep to American Dad every single night. That
is so specific.
So random. I had never seen it before we got together. Like I was never like allowed to watch those like adult cartoons. And so like for some reason, that's become our comfort show. And we put it on every single night and fall asleep to it. And there's an episode where the family like goes on an Amazing Race-esque show, and I was percolating ideas, and that episode randomly started playing, and I was like, how hilarious would it be if I forced two strangers to go on a reality show like The Amazing Race, where they're forced together like 24/7 in hotel rooms and taxis and boats and planes, like really forcing them to get comfortable very fast. And like the idea just sprang from there. I was like, oh, I'm going to make them miserable and so uncomfortable and so awkward. And I just felt like that was the perfect storm for tension and like chemistry and conflict and drama. So that's where it came from.
Yeah, so fun. Now, where did American Dad come from?
Literally, that's all my husband. He grew up on those shows, and he was like, I'm going to introduce you to some high-class television. And it was American Dad. So,
did you fall asleep to TV prior to that?
No. Yeah, like this was I would read before bed or maybe watch like it was very rare. It wasn't like an every night thing. And now it's cool. Get out of the shower, turn on American Dad, set the timer for 30 minutes, and have enough time to watch the first 7 minutes of an episode and fall asleep to the shenanigans.
Wow.
I know.
That's impressive.
Yeah,
we love a routine.
Yeah, it's a routine for sure.
You wanted the book to have all sorts of things, and you also said cheese.
Oh, yeah.
Mozzarella cheese.
Mozzarella meat cube, baby.
Yes. I know. It's not really a joke anymore because it would have been funny about 8 minutes ago.
But it's still funny, so I like the callback.
Know that I wanted to say mozzarella cheese in that moment, but I didn't want to interrupt you.
I love mozzarella sticks.
Yeah, I could tell. Are you a TGI Fridays fan? Just so happens to be a thing that you would find at an airport.
Literally every time I've traveled, there's always an airport TGI Fridays or like an airport Wolfgang Pucks. Like those are the random things that I feel like I always clock every time I go there.
Yeah. I was just talking to a couple authors about Chili's.
Yes, I love me at Chili's.
Yeah. Are mozzarella sticks your go-to order of an appetizer?
No. If I was single and by myself, yes. My husband doesn't eat a lot of fried stuff, so like I don't I indulge when it's like the two of us are gonna indulge, but when it's just me, like I don't want to eat mozzarella sticks by myself. That's lame.
Sure.
But I think nachos would be my go-to order.
Oh, nachos.
But that just didn't have the same ring to it for a meat cube.
It's not, no. When I would go to TGI Fridays as a kid, I would do the potato skins.
Yes. And remember I think you can still get those in the freezer section.
I'm sure you can, and I did growing up. I can't, no. No judgment to anyone who does.
Do it.
And if they wanted to sponsor Gaze Reading, then I would happily support them.
I know. Come on, TGI Fridays.
Chip Pons, thank you so much for being my guest gay reader today. Everyone who get Winging It With You out now wherever you get your books, and fall in love with them on their amazing journey.
Thank you so much for having me.
And happy Pride!
Happy Pride!
Leila, Chip, thank you so much for being here today. Everyone, I am always grateful for your time and for being here listening to Gaze Reading. I will see you later this week with another special episode, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks. Bye.